Test, test, test. Good evening, District 1. How's everybody doing? All right. Hey, my name is Neiman Young. I'm Assistant City Manager with the City of Corpus Christi. Two of the departments that I manage are the Public Works Department and the Engineering Department. And the Engineering Department is the program manager or the department of record for one of the initiatives that we're talking about tonight, which is Bond 2024. In addition to us discussing Bond 2024, we're also utilizing a portion of this town hall to detail our discussions regarding the Type A sales tax. But before we get started, I'm having a little harder time discerning between city staff versus citizens. So let me ask city staff if y'all can sit on the left side of the room, and our citizens, if y'all can come forward. I know that the screen is a little hard to see. We'd be happy to have y'all up front, and we could definitely walk you all through the presentation. More than welcome. All right. All right, with that being said, before we get into our discussion tonight, I'd like to take this opportunity to introduce some of the key leaders that we have in attendance tonight. First, ladies and gentlemen, we do have our mayor, Ms. Paulette Guajardo. We have our District 3 Councilman, Councilman Roland Barrera. In addition, we have the city manager, Mr. Peter Zanoni. And ladies and gentlemen, I also like to take this opportunity to introduce you all to the host for tonight's meeting. We have our councilman at large. Oh, I'm sorry. We also have, our councilman at large. I'm sorry about that. Councilman Jim Klein. And we have our host for tonight. We have Councilman Everett Roy. I'm sorry, I'm all discombobbled. Councilman, please, if you say a few words.
Those Army guys aren't supposed to have that problem. First of all, I'd like to thank everyone that's come out to our community center. This is one of the areas that I'm most proud of in District 1. This is a spectacular piece of property that has the senior center. If you came in, you would see that we're putting a skate park in there that's a little bit different than the skate park that is down at Cole Park. We have a dog park, and then this is also going to be a future area that we're going to have a police substation in. So there's a lot going on. It's a heavy utilized park. I want to thank Parks and Recreation for taking care of it. And it's just a wonderful place to hang out. So again, I want to welcome everyone. If you have questions, this is a good time to ask questions and understand what we're doing. A lot of important things that are coming forward, and we appreciate the community coming out and having input. So I'd like to go ahead and give it back to Neiman. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. And before we get started, let me see the city manager. Sir, would you like to say a few words?
Yeah, thank you, Neiman. And for the folks I haven't met before in City Council District 1, I want to say hi to you tonight. You guys are from D1 too, right? These guys made it all the way up here from North Beach, so something good must be happening tonight, right? Yeah. Yeah, so we're glad to be here. This is broadcast on Facebook and YouTube and some of our other social media outlets as well. It's part of our motto at City Hall, or our business platform at City Hall, which is inclusion, transparency, and what's the other one? Let's see, inclusion, transparency, service delivery, says Neiman. So we're here tonight to engage the community on two very important matters, and Neiman's going to begin on Bond 2024, and then Heather, our Assistant City Manager, will talk about the sales tax initiative. So I just want to say hi as a City Manager. We're working hard for our community, and tonight is going to be a good meeting. It's a listening session. Neiman's going to present information, but we really want to hear from you all about what you think, about what you hear from the presenters. So we appreciate you being here. We know you could be anywhere, but we're glad you're here tonight. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Neiman. Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir. So the city manager is absolutely correct. Tonight we're here to talk to you all about two very large initiatives that the city's taken on, that being Bond 2024 and the Type A sales tax. Normally, we usually see town halls that's dedicated to one significant policy initiative, but since we are carrying so many different initiatives at the moment, we're utilizing this opportunity to talk about two initiatives. Understanding that this would be more of an abbreviated version, so I can have enough time for my colleague Heather to come speak as well. But do note that for Bond 2024, there is a much more comprehensive presentation detailing all the different projects and detailing the bond itself at www.cctexas.com/Bond 2024. Again, that's cctexas.com/Bond 2024. And before I get started, please let me take an opportunity to introduce our Councilman Pusley. Would you like to say a few words, sir? Okay. All right. So Bond 2024, can you all hear me? Bond 2024, what we're proposing to you all tonight in its current form is a $175 million bond program. And as many people note, that may cause a little concern or a little sticker shock to those. But what I would like to do is take this opportunity to do a comparable between Bond 2024 and Bond 2022. Bond 2022 was a program that was approved by voters by a very large margin in 2022 for $125 million. For Bond 2024, we're looking at doing a similar program, but this one is coming in at a cost of about $50 million more. And if you look at, the different categories of each proposal, what you really will note that the biggest difference between Bond 24 and Bond 22 is a significantly higher investment in our public safety infrastructure, whereas in $10 million in Bond 22, which paid for the design of some police substations and fire stations, now in Bond 2024, we're asking for $45 million, and that's going to actually do the construction on the public safety infrastructure for the city. So for Bond 2024, we're proposing our 42 projects, with 22 of them being dedicated to streets, 11 to our parks and quality of life projects, 7 public safety projects, and 2 projects that will be dedicated to building new libraries and a new community center. So here's the biggest question that we get asked a lot of times when we start discussing the bond. Number one, how much is it going to cost the taxpayer? And I'm happy to report that for Bond 2024, what we're proposing to you in its current form, we could deliver these programs, these projects to our community without a property tax rate increase. Again, we could deliver these projects to this community without a property tax rate increase. So understanding that we can deliver without increasing taxes, the next question is, okay, if approved, can the city really deliver on its promise? And that's fair. If you look at some of our previous bonds back in 2010, 2012, you note that we've had projects that were approved by our voters, and it'd be 5, 6, 7, 8, maybe even 10 years later before the project is complete. However, with the change of city leadership approximately 5 years ago, we really changed the way that the city was doing business with its capital projects. And now we're happy to report that since we have changed our processes for our bonds, we have seen a faster delivery of the projects that were approved by our voters. For example, what I call our report card for Bond 2020 was able to deliver 47 projects, 88% are complete or in construction. And in Bond 22, even though it's only been about a year and a half, we already have all our projects in design, and 6 of them are complete in construction. Do we have questions? So,
if you're not going to raise, there's not going to be an increase in taxes, where's the money coming from?
And I could talk to you about that, ma'am. It's basically going to be savings due to debt being retired. All right. So the answer to your questions, number one, yes, we can deliver this without increasing taxes. And number two, we do have a demonstrated report card where we are able to deliver those projects to the community in a very timely and efficient manner. So, understanding that we are having an abbreviated discussion regarding Bond 2024, I decided that, A, it's probably best that we discuss the projects that are pertinent first citywide and then to the district specifically. And let's start with streets. For District 1, what we're proposing is $3 million for the design to expand Rand Morgan. As everybody knows, that's a major corridor that's experiencing some significant residential growth, and that residential growth is outpacing that corridor. So we're looking at asking the voters for the funding that's necessary in order to increase the capacity of the road, where it'll be widened, with increase striping and things of that nature, and really tackle all the congestion that's being experienced in that corridor. For for Sam Rankin Road, what we're asking is for $3 million. Now, $3 million, this isn't going towards the road improvements. Rather, what we're doing is leveraging funding, which is a guiding principle for our bonds. For Sam Rankin Road, the port was able to secure a grant of $8.5 million to improve the roadways along the entire Sam Rankin corridor. And they're asking that, hey, city will pay to improve and reconstruct that road. We're just asking for you all to partner with us and do the improvements to the utilities. So for $3 million, we're asking from the voters, we'll get improved utilities, and in return on our investment, we'll get $8.5 million worth of street corridor. For parks, we're asking for $4.5 million to build a new aquatic center in the Hillcrest area. $1.75 million to continue on our Levante Park expansion. And I'm sure that everybody in District 1 is fully aware of the fact that a year and a half ago, we was able to knock down the old wastewater treatment plant that was in Levante Park. We was able to repurpose that from industrial, and actually now we have even more dedicated land space in Levante Park, making it the second largest park in the city. So since we have invested so much into that park and created so much more green space, we're asking for an additional $1.75 million so we can continue on our improvements and progress that's being made at Levante Park. In addition, we're asking for $2 million to continue to improve on our monuments and our amenities in Cheryl Veterans Memorial Park. For public safety, what we're asking for is $25 million, which will go to the replacement of Fire Station 10 on Horn Road and the replacement of Fire Station 8 on Castores. In addition, we're asking for $5 million to do the design of Fire Station 9 and Fire Station 11. Now, when I say the design, some may say, okay, what is design? Design is the engineering design with the expectation that the deliverables will be construction documents. So we'll actually pay for the engineers in Bond 24, get the construction plans, and then we'll be back in Bond 26 asking for the funding that's necessary to go ahead and do the construction and the replacement of those 2 fire stations. On the police side of the house, we're looking at $9 million for the construction of the Northwest Police Substation. And if you aren't aware, that police substation is going to go right here. Again, what that means is we're actually going to establish a permanent presence of CCPD right here in District 1 in West Goose Park, and we'll continue to advance the police infrastructure so we can continue the efforts in community policing and permanent presence. In addition, just like we're asking for the funding to build the construction of a police substation in the north, we're also looking for the funding to build a police substation in District 5 or the south side. Now, these are demonstrated success stories when I said that we're operating differently, because the design for these 2 facilities was actually approved in Bond 22, and we was able to get those that design complete, and we delivered on our promise to our citizens. Now we're asking for our citizens to entrust us with the funding to go in and build out those facilities. In addition, we're asking for $1 million to do the design of a police substation that's going to be near La Palmera Mall. For additional facilities, what we're asking for is $2 million for the design of a standalone library and community center in District 5 near District 3, and $1.25 million to do some renovations to our historical homes at Heritage Park. And as the city manager stated, We aren't developing these plans in a vacuum. It's not city staff or even city council delivering these plans. What we are is going to town halls like we are here tonight and talking to different stakeholder groups across the community. And what we're looking for, like the city manager stated, was that feedback so we can continue to refine the plan. So by the time that it does make it to the ballot, it's not a city plan, it's a community plan. So these are just a few of the stakeholders from May through June. And these are more community town halls. At any given time, again, you can go to cctexas.com/bond 2024, look at that schedule, and those meetings are open to the public, and you're more than welcome to attend. With that being said, before I go into any further, I'll stand by for any questions because those are the District 1 specific projects. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. All right. The last proposition you brought forward was Prop A, where it talked about the reauthorization of the sales tax. Are you saying that this is not in place of Prop A? It is not going to be the 1/8 of a cent sales tax?
No, ma'am. This is specifically the bond for bond 2024, and then regarding the sales tax, that's going to be the second portion of this meeting, and that's going to be presented by Heather right after this. Next question. Yes, ma'am.
Maybe since you guys have only completed 6% of what you did for 2022, since you guys have only not even completed, really only started 6% of bond 2022, why not wait to get those things done instead of adding more assets that you guys cannot maintain? Because the current portfolio as it stands has not been maintained well. I think it's $827 million in real estate assets this city of Corpus Christi owns, and they're falling apart all the time. Parks, fire stations, water gardens, American Bank Center, Whataburger Field. So what's the guarantee if you guys haven't even started 2022, why another bond?
We have started. When that says 6%, that's 6% complete. And that's great news because what you guys understand is we're dealing with construction, and to be able to turn around, gain an approval and get a construction project completed and 6% of that is done, that's great news, especially when you're comparing that to bond programs in 2012, 2011, or things of that nature. But what you will note that all our projects, 29 of the projects are in design, or two of them are in construction. That's for construction. For when you start talking about engineering and construction, that's a great report card. So if you have bond 22 and you anticipate a construction project is going to take 2 or 3 years, for us to be this far ahead and it's only been a year and a half, that's great news.
Yeah, in the private sector, it wouldn't be great because it bankrupt the company, but.
Well, I don't know about the private sector, but I know that that's great news. It's definitely a significantly better report card than what you would have seen 8, 9, 10 years ago. Next question. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Who's going to do these designs?
When we are, if approved by the voters, when we do the design, what we actually do is put the projects out to bid, and then we get engineering companies to bid on the projects. We do look at their qualifications, and then we'll contract with those firms depending on their experience and things of that nature.
But will the designs be here in Corpus Christi in the city, or will they be outsourced?
Well, I can't, of course, I can't say, hey, we're going to give this here or here, but what I can state that in Bond 22, a large portion of the projects were with local companies. And I anticipate that it's going to be very similar.
If you're going to be outsourcing these designs, aren't you spending taxpayers' dollars on these instead of keeping them here?
When you say outsourcing, what do you mean, sir?
The design, you're going to hire an outside company out of the county or out of state company to design whatever it is and pay them instead of keeping the money here.
Again, I go out there, I'd say that like 90% of Bond 22 were local companies, not out of town.
Okay, and how about for this new upcoming one?
Well, I can't tell you what the bidding process is going to be. I mean, again, it's a competitive bid. We can't game the system or anything like that, but I highly anticipate that, you know, a large bulk of the work is going to go local. I mean, we know there's going to be local bidders, and we know a lot of the firms that we have worked with have long established relationships with the city, and they're local in nature. So I highly anticipate that a lot of the funding that is approved by the voters is going to stay in the community.
Okay. And when will you let us know if these tax money is going to go out of town?
When we do have the construction contracts that we want to get approved, that's when it goes to council. It's a public meeting, and we detail each of the firms that we're looking at contracting with for the design. So it's a public record, it's a public meeting, and there's opportunities to receive feedback from our citizens.
And no underhanded job is expected.
I don't do underhanded, sir.
Okay. You'd be surprised, a lot of people do it, but you don't.
Well, at the end of the day, it's a competitive project. Process. It's transparent. It's brought to a public meeting and afford the opportunity for anyone to comment on. So it's not something that's going to be hidden from public view.
Thank you.
You had a question, sir?
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, I wanted to directly respond to your question. I'm Mike Pusley, the at-large city council member. I'm almost 4 years in on the city council, and I will tell you, since I've been there, this city council has been very local-centric. So we pride ourselves on looking at the bid specs and looking at giving these projects to local industry, local engineering firms, local architectural firms. Now, engineering firms and architectural firms do not go through a bidding process. That's against state law. What we have to do is look at their qualifications, and their qualifications based on what kind of job we're trying to do for the specific project. And there are times where a project is very specific, like fire stations, things of that nature that call for very specialized designs, and many times there are not local talent for those type of projects. But I will assure you, and I can't speak for every council member here, but we've been very, very strong on providing these jobs to local industry, and we will continue to be.
Thank you, sir. Yes, sir.
I got to say that the local contractor is doing our job on North Beach. They're redoing the whole Surfside Park. I think it's Shaw Glass, local company. And they've been doing a wonderful job out there. And anytime you have any questions, they answer them. They don't try to dodge them. And I think they're ahead of schedule. And they are really doing a real good job. So that's one of our local contractors. And anytime you need anything, you just talk to them, and they're right there. So, and that park's looking real nice, Surfside Park. So we're real happy with that. And we had some questions, and Peter came out himself, and all the engineers came out. I had some, my houses are a little controversial over there, but they came out with all the engineers when I asked for them. So I'd say that that local contractor is really good.
Thank you, sir. And again, that was one more bond project, so demonstrated success. We appreciate it. All right, additional questions? Yes, sir.
Well, I had a question, and it was the fact that our previous city manager had made us aware that bond money before was not used for the things that we voted for, and the money was gone. But she couldn't say where it went. She just told us it was gone. The mayor at the time said she doesn't know how to do creative accounting. Now, if that's continuing, that's why the people and the residents don't trust the city council, don't trust what anyone's telling us, because we now know things did not get fixed. Things were not done with the money. And I said, they need to be reassured that's not going to be happening again. Right. Because that's very disappointing. When nobody wants to vote for another bond, they go, well, the money will go to wherever they want.
Right. Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Neiman can address that. I was telling the lady, the representative, that we have extreme accounting. We meet monthly. I meet with our financial team. That means our finance director, our budget director, monthly. We look at all the projects. That report card on the screen has detailed information on exactly what projects were approved, what the status is, how much was awarded to it, how much was spent. So no doubt things in the past weren't as well organized or managed. And so today, in fact, is my 5th year anniversary with the city, and we're changing a lot of business processes at City Hall over the past 5 years. So, yeah. Yes, ma'am?
Yes, sir, and that's absolutely correct. We maintain quarterly reports that goes to council because there's a lot of oversight on council to ensure that we aren't, exercising that business practice. We're delivering on exactly what we're promising to the public. And if you want to, beyond reports, you could look at the demonstrated success on the ground. We're talking about Staples, that was bond. Yorktown, that was bond. The Police Training Academy was bond. The Aquatic Center at Bill Witt Park, that was bond. So we do have tangible success, demonstrated success on what we're asking for the voters to vote on. We're delivering.
I just want to say one thing. I actually got started as a council member because I was working with the school district here to bring their bond to the public. And this particular school district that I was working with, they put their bond out, and unfortunately they didn't have, by the time they got to the project, the expenses had grown to the point where they had to whittle down what they were trying to do. And that's an unfortunate thing. But I will tell you, since I've been involved in the city, my first time was 2017, when you take a look at what we're doing and the accountability that we have, we're constantly looking at the council as a whole and the mayor to make sure that the things that we're asking to get done are getting done. One of the ways that you can tell that is that look at our credit rating. It's important to understand what the city's credit rating is in terms of how others, outside entities that do not have an interest, look at us and they judge what our credit rating is. And we have a very good credit rating. And we just went through, maybe Peter, you can talk about that, because we just went through an updated rating, right? Yeah.
Yeah, so to the councilman's point, we annually go through a review from the credit agencies that give us our credit score. And the one that we just did in the last 2 months, they reaffirmed or they confirmed our high rating. So they didn't change it, they didn't increase it or decrease it, but we're already a strong rated city. And why that's important is because when we borrow money to execute bond programs, we borrow the money at a much lower interest rate, saving taxpayer money. So it's important to be a well financially managed and run city. And one positive result of that is lower borrowing costs, meaning we can put more money into the production of roads and buildings and parks, that type of thing. But I was telling the representative here in the back that all this information on the bond program, this is a summary that's on this screen, but there's a quarterly report that we produce, and every project is listed in there, and it's on our website. So you can go to our website. I think it's under the budget office's homepage. There's a detailed report on every capital project, and it tells you, is it complete? Is it in design? Is it under construction? Or is it starting soon? And that's part of our transparency. That's what I was saying in the beginning, which is transparent, inclusive, and open. That's what our business processes are at City Hall. Yes, ma'am. Okay, we're going to turn it back over to Neiman.
Yes, sir. And thank you, sir. And thank you, sir. And that's absolutely correct. Again, this is just a summary. I'm pressed for time because I know that I'm looking at the back and they're telling me to get off the microphone. But again, do note that our more comprehensive presentation in detail on the project can be found at cctexas.com/bond 2024. In addition, if you have any questions or concerns, again, my name is Assistant City Manager Neiman Young, and we'll be more than happy to answer any questions or concerns that you have after the meeting. So with that being stated, we're going to go ahead and turn it over to Heather Herbert.
Thanks, Neiman. So we're going to switch over now to the sales tax reauthorization presentation. So let me do that real fast. Okay, So there's already been a question about the sales tax reauthorization, so we'll go through that. And what we're trying to talk about is a little bit about local sales tax, and then looking at the allowable uses of type A sales tax, what the current authorization is, and then what those baseline reauthorization projects are, along with what we have planned and what we've accomplished through our community stakeholders and our community feedback, and then where we're going from here. So looking at local sales tax, so the state of Texas authorizes up to an 8.25 cent sales tax that can be collected on certain goods and services that are taxable. So of this, 25 cents is allocated, or 6.25 cents is allocated to the state for the operations of the state government, and then up to 2 cents is able to be used on a local basis. And so we have 6 different uses of that 2 cents. So, like I said, 6.25 cents goes directly to the state for the state operations. And for fiscal year 24, that's estimated at $445 million that is generated here in Corpus and goes to the state. And then of the 2 cents that's available for local purposes, half a cent of that goes to the RTA. And so that operates for the operations of our regional transit system. And that is estimated to produce about $35 million. Then 1 cent of sales tax goes to the city into the general fund for general city operations. That is estimated to produce about $71 million. And then the remaining quarter cent is divided up 4 different ways. And so we have 2 authorizations under the use of type A sales tax. One of those is for the project of improvement to downtown seawall. The other is the construction of the arena. Then we have an 1/8 of a cent that goes for type B, or it's authorized under type B for economic development, affordable housing, and streets. And then finally, there's 1/8 cents that goes to the crime control district. And so the crime control district is for crime prevention and is in support of the police department. So this is just a visual representation. Again, for every penny in sales tax, or for the local portion, half of it goes to the city of Corpus Christi, a quarter of it goes to the RTA, and the remaining quarter is divided into 4 equal pieces that goes to the 2 type A authorizations, the type B authorization, and then the crime control district. So looking at what the type A and type B authorization is, so back in 1979, there was the Development Corporation Act, which was approved by the legislature, that allows city to utilize sales tax for economic development and the attraction of new growth to a local economy. And so eligible uses of that include quality of life improvements, convention tourism and entertainment facilities, professional and amateur sports facilities, affordable housing project, water and sewer facilities, parking and transportation facilities, and projects that develop and expand business enterprises or retain jobs. So the funding cannot be used for residential streets, residential areas, or for general services. So this, if it's allocated for economic development, it cannot go back into the city's general services or be used in residential areas. So currently we have 2 projects that are authorized, that were authorized back in 2000 by the voters. This was done for a 25-year term, and just for context, right now, each 1/8 cents produces almost $9 million. So the first project was the construction of the American Bank Center Arena. So the 1/8 cent sales tax was authorized to pay the debt that was incurred to build the arena. In addition, it can be used for operational needs, capital projects, and things like that. So we've been very fortunate in the fact that that revenue has continued to grow. And so right now the debt service is about $3 million, $2 to $3 million on that, which allows us to utilize the additional $6 million and reinvest that back in the arena. So it's gone back in for updates to end-of-life equipment, for improvements, technology, things like that at the arena. But that authorization expires in September of 2025. So then the second project that is currently in place is the improvements to the downtown seawall. Again, that was approved back in 2000, and debt was issued for those major improvements. The debt service, again, is between $2 and $3 million a year. this is producing about $9 million a year. And so we've been able to take that money and reinvest it back not only in the seawall, but in the marina, in the water gardens, in the art center, and the art museums. And so put that money to work. Now that authorization expires in March of 26. Because these two are expiring, that is why we're here to talk about what the second life of projects that we want to look at for these. So we did take what was called Proposition A back then to the voters in November of 23, and the projects were not approved in the form that they were taken forward in. And so we took those lessons learned, and one of the things we heard was not enough community impact or input or not enough stakeholder input. So city manager met with city council members, and then we have been meeting with those stakeholders and those community, the community stakeholders and community input over the last month or so. So we've met with almost, I think, 60 different groups so far, and have received that input on the proposed projects. So back in February, on February 27th, the city council met and discussed what those baseline proposals or baseline projects are. From that, we moved forward. We did talk about it again on May the 8th, and so we'll discuss what those projects are. So the first project, to use the 1/8 cents, would be for the American Bank Center complex. So use it not only on the arena, but also in the convention center and the Selena Auditorium. As it stands right now, that money can be used only in the arena, and so we want to expand that use to the whole complex. In addition, we have capacity to be able to focus on other city-owned facilities within the C district. So that would include the 3 museums, the Art Museum, the Science and History Museum, along with Asian Cultures Museum. In addition, we want to focus on the Harbor Playhouse and the Water Garden. So those are all city-owned facilities that we could invest this money back into. So as you can see, they're all in close proximity to each other, and this really is kind of the heart of our cultural and entertainment district on the C district side. So then the second proposed project is for seawall, the seawall flood control along with citywide flood control. So looking at, we have the downtown seawall structure, which really protects our downtown area. And that structure is not only that seawall that goes along shoreline all the way from McGee Beach to the port, but also the breakwater, the salt flat levees, the T and the L head land masses, along with the flood control pumps that are in the downtown area that helps protect that area. But not only do we want to focus on the seawall, but then also focus on citywide coastal flooding or coastal resiliency projects. Being a coastal town, we have a lot of flooding, and we have areas around town that have not been able to be developed because of the continuing flooding problems. So we worked with our Public Works Department and really looked at that 10-year master plan that they have and identified projects that are in commercial areas, because again, this is an economic development tool. So we're in areas that have not been able to develop, or within some of our commercial areas that we have flooding issues. And we'll look at a map on where these are spread out. But starting with the Calallen area, the issues on FM 624, looking at the Turkey Creek area, looking at North Beach Phase 2. So we have a Phase 1, which is the linear park drainage structure on North Beach. So this would be the Phase 2, which would commence after the bridge has been taken down. Corpus Christi Bay shore erosion mitigation and protection. There's a lot of issues along Corpus Christi Bay shoreline all the way from Cole Park down towards the university, where we've got a lot of erosion. The Clarkwood Ditch and Oso tributary, the Williams Ditch area, which is at Williams and Rodfield Road, along with Oso Creek that kind of meanders through the south side of town. So one of the concerns we also heard back in November is that there was not a designated or defined amount that would go in protection in support of the seawall. So working with our engineering department, we've identified, or we're working toward to identify what the near needs are, what the, every 5 years, every 10 years, every 20 years type of needs are going to be to help maintain and protect the seawall. So right now we're using an estimation of about $73 million over the next 25 years that will be set aside or specifically designated for the seawall continued improvements and protection. So that does leave sufficient funding. We'll talk a little bit about how much we think this will produce, but there does leave sufficient funding for these other projects. So here's just a picture of where these projects are. So going all the way from the Cal Allen area all the way down to the south side. So these projects are spread out across the city. So one of the other things we heard from voters in November was a term. So we do have aspects of sales tax that do not have an expiration date. The amount that goes to the city for the general fund, the amount that goes to the RTA, and the amount that goes to the state does not have a defined expiration date. But we are proposing a 25-year term on this one that would allow us to be able to develop projects, and then if we wanted to issue 20-year debt to help move those projects along more quickly. So over the 25-year term, we estimate that the 1/8 cents will produce about $256 million. And so we feel like the projects that have been identified can be properly funded with that revenue source. So then looking at our next steps, so we are into May now. We've been talking with people. We've been hearing that feedback. We've been partnering with the bond project presentation on the community input. In June, we're going to start refining that input and then bring this back to City Council. Actually, it's going to be on the 18th instead of the 25th, but give a final recommendation to City Council. Then if there's any remaining questions, we'll continue to answer those, continue educating the community. And then the call for the election will be on August the 18th, and Election Day is scheduled for November the 5th. So part of that time in between when the election is called and the election day, we'll continue to educate and continue listening to the community as we go through this process. So these are just some dates. I think actually we're almost through with a lot of these dates now. So that concludes my portion. What questions do you have?
These dollar amounts that you're showing on us, are you going out for bids on any of these, or are you just going, oh, well, I think it's going to cost $195 million?
So those are estimates based off of the type of work. No, we've not gone out for any formal bids or anything on that. That's just based off of estimations.
Well, where you get your information from to say, okay, this is going to cost $195 million.
So that is based off of working through our Public Works Department and with the engineering department on probable cost.
Hello. First of all, thank you both and all the representatives for presenting what you have. It was very informative. Earlier, I've been trying to teach myself, and I had a very good conversation with Roy Everett prior to the meeting. So thank you, because I want to first say thank you for your transparency stars. You can teach the county a lot. I noticed that for taxes, property taxes, I believe the city had earned $174 million, and this is per your transparency stars. And through the sales tax revenue, $146 million. And I was kind of interested in the basics in terms of, as a community, as present-day taxpayers, etc. These are things that kind of come up in all cities. Have we tried to work without having to pull bonds, etc.? And then going back to the economic development discussion, I've learned a lot about that. And I know most of what I know is probably inaccurate, but nonetheless, what I have learned is it is critical, economic development, but everything I have also read is when it comes down to accountability, the way it is handled, in a sense, you risk bias at times where you choose winners and losers for growth. And I really want y'all to be aware of that. I was very grateful, like I said, of the momentary discussion, because one of the things I did learn in the process is that y'all do have extensive economic discussions, and all the monies that do go out to the economic development entities that they do give you reports, or that you do vote on them as a city council. So this isn't done in a vacuum, and the public can learn. I was going to ask you, Can you please have something similar to this, an outreach regarding where the revenue for the sales tax revenue and property tax revenue actually goes to? It can be very simple, but I'm really interested only because of everything that we learn. And I do have concerns that I understand the need for water. I do respect that. At the same time, it comes back to the losers and the winners of the growth. In other words, one side of the south side of Nueces County is going to flourish, whereas the Robstown, Calallen community may become an industrial cesspool, and we don't want that. So I guess that's where it comes down to. Can you please have an outreach to educate your constituents? Thank you. And again, thank you for your time. Thank you so much.
You mentioned the American Bank Center, the expansion that's around it, and I didn't hear anything about a hotel that we'll be building that we guarantee that every room is going to be filled, that they will not lose money. That's not going to be a part of this? And,
No.
you know, all of a sudden it's going to pop up and go, well, it's part of the expansion.
No, that's not at all proposed.
So that
using
we're
this
not
money.
doing that, that's not in
No.
there. Okay, thank you very much.
Sure.
I'm sorry I missed the majority of your presentation, but are you saying that we're going to keep the seawall? Okay. I'm always afraid I talk too loud. Are you saying that the 1/8 cent seawall tax is going to stay now, but you're going to dilute it with other projects?
So yes, right now, so remember it was for the original, the project is for where the improvements to the seawall, that has been satisfied. And so now we're looking at another project that would include the seawall. So yes, it would include improvements that are needed over the next 25 years in protection to the seawall. But then we feel that there is sufficient revenue to not only protect the seawall, but also include some coastal resiliency and flood protection type projects. Yes. Yeah, we will have money coming out of this original authorization. So we think between 14 and 15 million will be there. This revenue is expected to produce about 256 million over the 25 years. And so we did earmark about 73 million that'll go just for the seawall. And so we feel like that will be properly protected and maintained over the 25-year period.
Mm-hmm. So if you're gonna, how much money is in there now?
About 14 million, 13 million.
Okay, 14 million wouldn't rebuild.
But that, so we would not, the city would not be responsible for rebuilding that. That is covered under our FEMA public assistance. And so if there was a catastrophic failure or there was damage to that, that's included in part of what we work with FEMA on with those funding. So it is protected under that.
You said the city wouldn't be responsible for rebuilding it?
No, we'd be working with FEMA, and we would receive money through the FEMA public assistance, just like we do, with Packery Channel. We had damage to Packery Channel. We utilized FEMA funding along with some city matching funds to rebuild Packery Channel. Whenever we have damage due to that, we are eligible to receive funding through FEMA.
That's an important distinction. The city would put some money into it, but FEMA would help us pay for the majority of it, just like they did for the Packery Channel. And they're also helping pay for I'm drawing a senior moment, the pier that got wiped out, Bob Hall Pier, sorry, Bob Hall Pier. So FEMA helps governmental entities with that. But I also want to make it a point that, and I'm only going to speak for myself, that I'm supportive of the 1/8 cent for the ABC complex, if you will, that she showed on the first chart, and for the seawall protection, the other 1/8 cent for seawall, and the downtown flood protection, which includes the T heads, the L head. Those are part of what helps us protect our downtown from storm surges, and also the rock wall that you see, the breakwater, that is going to have to undergo some improvements here very soon as well. So that's what I'm going to support. Some of these other projects that they're talking about, these flood mitigation projects, the council still has to have a lot of discussion about those before we pick out which ones we think are most important.
Not the seawall, but out, I guess.
The breakwater, yes, ma'am.
Is that going to be part of this? Or,
Yes,
oh, it is?
It's
Okay.
it's part of the seawall
good.
funding, the 180 cent for the seawall. It includes that structure.
Okay, good.
Yeah, and so the flood control structure as defined is not only just the seawall that runs along shoreline, or it is also the breakwater. It's the L, the L and the two T heads, along with the pumps. There's pumps in the downtown area, along with the salt flat levee that's over to the side. Those all work as a system to protect that downtown area. And so the proposition would be to, or what's pros pro.
All right, I have a series of questions. In August and September and early October last year, when you were, and it was you, Heather, going around talking to different groups about Prop A.
Yes.
And at that point, you said there was still 25 million in the seawall improvement fund. Now you're saying 14. Where'd the 11 million go?
So we're continuing to use to do projects. We're continuing to do improvements to the marina. We just recently did improvements to the water garden. And so we just funded about $3.5 million at the art museum for HVAC repairs, because that's all eligible uses of the seawall. So we've continued. We feel that, and actually at the time I may have said 25 million currently, but I believe that we said we figured we'd have between 13 and 14 million at the conclusion of that in 26.
Okay, then my next question, are you going to be, you are asking for 2 different 8-cent taxes?
Yes.
Plus the bond issue. Now I know it's different department, but the city is now asking for 3 things. Is that 3 things on the November ballot we will have to vote on?
So actually it'll be multiple things, because on the bond side, you'll have multiple propositions there'll be one for parks, one for public safety, one for roads, facilities. So there'll be multiple propositions that'll be for the bond election. And then for right now, we think we'll have at least 2 propositions for the reauthorization, one for each 1/8 cents. And then depending on how some of those projects are broken down, there may be more than 2, because we may have 2 propositions for one of the 1/8 cents. It's just the way we have to do that. So yes, there will be multiple propositions, not just 1 or 2. So we have 2 1/8 cents that are expiring, and we'll have 2 different. So one project is the seawall and the flood mitigation. That will use 1 1/8 cents, and then we have another project which would be the American Bank Center, along with those other cultural facilities downtown. So that would be a different 1/8 cents. So there's 2 1/8 cents.
So we have now established that the numbers are guesstimates. I think that the problem that the community had with Prop A last fall and knocked it down entirely was because it was a blank check. So we're sitting in that position again today, where everything is a guesstimate. There's nothing definitive. And legally, is there anything holding you guys to require to use that 1/8 percentage? Because we're not going to see any documentation. Nobody is going to write their name on anything saying, okay, well, in 25 years, all these things should be done.
Sure.
Or have been taken care of. But what happens is 25 years ago, whenever this was approved in 2000, you've got a whole new different set of people who, and as a community, you even driving onto Guth Park, you guys ripped up all the grass because you're supposed to put in a dog park, and it's just sitting there now. So how do we as a community hold you guys accountable? Because as far as I'm concerned, 25 years is too long. If you can't get it done in 10, then you're irresponsible and you don't know how to run operations. Which having to come back to the community constantly every 2 years for bond after bond, and now this sales tax, where is the money going? Why aren't we, I mean, you guys just fired your CFO right in the middle of budget discussions. So I don't feel, and I've caught you in a couple of lies too, whenever with regards to some projects. We've already talked about that, and you know that is true. So how do we?
Excuse me, I don't know of any lies that I.
Okay, well, just go up Calicote and see how that Bitcoin was supposed to be finished in December, and how it's still sitting there and not finished. So there's that. How do we as a community? How do we even trust anything that you guys are telling us right now? And and how can we trust you with the tax dollars that you're already receiving and you're not accomplishing very much with? I had to drive through a neighborhood to get here. The streets are horrible here. And now you want us to approve a sales tax or extend a sales tax that doesn't allow for residential street repair.
So under the economic development authorization, if that's what the city council chooses to go forward with, it cannot be used for residential streets. So, I will say that on these 218 cents, you can see exactly where all the money has gone to. We've got the improvements to the seawall. We have the improvements to the construction of the arena at the American Bank Center, along with almost a $20 million investment into the marina. I think a $9 million investment into the water gardens, along with. Well, I can't speak to that, but it needed to be done, and so that money was allocated towards that. So I think it's very detailed on what the sales tax has been used for, along with on the American Bank Center, you can see exactly where that money has been used for not only the debt service of the arena for the construction of it, but along with the continued investment back into that. So I'm not really sure where, I can't answer your question on where do I think the money went to. I can show you exactly where the money went to on the 1/8 cent sales tax.
You can. Send
Sure.
an email and let us, and I'll distribute it to the community.
Sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, because there is continued ongoing. Yeah, I mean we've reinvested back in the arena, along with the seawall, which is going to continue to have maintenance. It's we just spent about $2 million doing routine maintenance a couple of years ago. We're about to come back again and continue doing that routine maintenance on it and reinvesting back into it to protect it.
But if you have the $12 million, there's your $2 million, so you don't need to do the sales tax.
But that's going to be a finite amount. I mean, this is something that will continue protecting it over the next 25 years. You also were asking about how do you know whether or not we're going to use the money or whatever. So there's two different parts to any voter election. There's the ballot language, and then there's the measure, which is the contract with the voters. The ballot language is the more simple. The measure is the very detailed, showing exactly where the money is going to be. That was on the last one before, back in November, that showed exactly where that money was going to go. As far as the estimations on projects, we do our best to estimate what those projects are going to cost based off of our current knowledge of it. We don't know until we actually start developing. So we use our best guess based off of our professional opinions to provide that estimates, and then after it would be approved, then we go in and we develop those more refined details.
So in engaging in the community, you guys hear the same, I hear the same complaints. So I don't understand why we can't conceptually operations make that a priority.
And I'll speak on the streets since I am in charge of the Public Works Department, and it's kind of funny because we hear you saying that streets aren't being repaired, but then I get phone calls about, hey, there's too much construction going on. So, we really got to figure out is that residential streets, there's a few that's going to be on the care of with operational funds in the Public Works Department. And this year alone, since we have revamped the operations of the Public Works Department, we've already done 40 in the city of Corpus Christi this year. To put that into context, we had we only at half year, and we already have 47 lane miles of street reconstruction. That's more construction than we did in an entire year, prior to us revamping the operations that the Public Works Department does. So we're definitely phone calls where they say there's too much construction going on. I wouldn't say that it's taking forever, because originally when we did the math and when we brought on the new Public Works Department director, their calculation was that since there was so much neglect taking place in the city, it was going to take 63 years, just to get our streets back up to standard. We was able to revamp the operation to 12 years. So it's going to take time? Yes, it's going to take
I have a
time.
question about the fact that before, when Zanoni first came in, he hired someone, and we had equipment that no one even knew how to use. They started doing it, and we stopped outsourcing. Are we outsourcing our street work again?
What you're referring to
Which
is
means not using the people that are talented, that have the ability, and that we hired by the city to do those jobs, and they're not doing it because we're outsourcing, and somebody doesn't do a quality job because, we don't know who they hire.
No, that's not correct. We are doing in-house. It's called self-performing. We do have.
What's self-performing?
Well, I was going to explain that.
Okay.
We have in-house crews, street crews that actually leave out of the Public Works Department compound through the gate, gets out into the community, and they're actually doing the repairs and the improvements to our residential streets.
They're employees of the city?
Employees of the city. So that's one team that we have.
Good.
Not one team, but a team of crews. But we also do depend on our contracting partners as well to get on board and assist us with, now we have 5 partners, 5 contracted companies that are contracted. Then we have the city crew and tackle these problems that's called residential streets in the city.
So it's a mixture?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Also, aren't objecting to the fact that there is new street construction going on. What I don't like is when a business is shut off from its customers.
Yes, ma'am.
And so nothing is being done to
Nothing's done to help them, because what happens when we are going to go into a construction project, there is a pre-construction meeting, and in that meeting, we do analyze with those business owners to develop, that plan, because we know that they're going to be the ones that's directly impacted. Perfect system, but it is a system that does include the feedback and the input from those businesses that's going to be impacted by the construction. Yes, sir.
Real quick question. I was reviewing the Texas Economic Development Sales Tax from the Texas Comptrollers, and there's a section under Type B eligible projects, primary job retention, and it did include public safety facilities as well as. And this is just to keep the jobs, people working that you already have here. And of course, I have butterfingers right now. Can you help me if I don't do this properly?
So yes, infrastructure is an allowable use. We are able to use it. Yes.
Okay, thank you, because it also included streets and roads.
Yes, and we do actually currently, so out of the Type B funding, we invest about $4 million a year. It can be used for commercial streets, so arterials and collectors. It just cannot be used for residential streets because it has to be in support or expanded business enterprises.
Actually, you say new or expanded, but this specifically indicated even just to retain existing jobs. In other words,
exactly,
an existing.
But that doesn't apply to.
And it doesn't fall under quality of life? Is that?
No.
Okay, and that can be clarified with the direct request.
What, like I said, in support of new expanded business.
It strictly states retention.
Something you can retain, yes.
In other words, if they're already there,
exactly,
you can fix their roads. You don't have to, quote, build a new road to a new company. Okay.
But it is limited to those that serve business, which residential streets do not serve business.
I wanted to go back and talk for a moment about District 1 and streets and things of that nature. 3,500 people that live in District 1. And one of the things that we do, I do as a council member, I'm out there in the community all the time where there are businesses, especially the majority of the bridge, right? When you take a look at all of the things that we've had to do in terms of detours with the bridge in the downtown area, uptown area, you know, the Hillcrest area, whatever the case is. And I get calls all the time from businesses that have said, hey, look, we're losing business right now. They can't get into our property, or can you help us in terms of getting better signage so that they know that we're still open? And that's one of the things that we do all the time. I've gotten with Neiman on multiple occasions and said, look, what can we do to help guide this traffic into these small businesses, because they can't survive without it. That happens in downtown on Chaparral. I can name the facilities. Lucy's on Chaparral is one of them, where we helped actually put the signage up and do some things while they were working on the demo for the hotel that was across the street. So that's something that we work on a consistent basis, because we understand the importance of small business, and that small business is 60% of our community. It makes up our community, and are very cognizant of making sure that they still maintain their right of way. So, you know, and District 1, I can tell you that the number of streets and the number of potholes, and I will have this number, actually, I'm asking for the information to be updated, but we do well over, and I don't even want to say the number, but it's hundreds of thousands of potholes a year. And as a city, it's an unbelievable amount. And I want to make sure that the people understand that and they can see that, because this new method in which we're using right now, we would have taken, like Neiman said, 60 years to get our streets caught up. But we're looking now at about 11 years. And I can tell you right now, this last year and a half, the street that I live on in the Northwest, it hadn't been touched in 40 years. And it's done. Some of the streets that are down by the river, they're done. And you know what? I didn't sit there and put my name in and say, hey, I live on that street. I waited through the process and checked the process. You can go online and you can look to see where you're at.
On Milford, we're having big trucks, industry type of trucks.
On what street?
On Milford, going down Milford. That's a community. And I know Calicote is kind of getting destroyed now because of what's been put out there. And I feel like we are headed the way of Hillcrest. I mean, there was a buffer zone, and y'all are going to build something in a buffer zone in Hillcrest. And now we're like, are we starting to become Hillcrest? Because these big giant trucks shouldn't be coming down a residential streets.
Right. Well,
I don't know if they're cutting across to get to an area or what.
I can tell you right now, out in the Northwest, we did have some of the new subdivisions. So the Northwest is growing. We've got 2 or 3 subdivisions off of 624 that are being built right now, and a lot of those trucks have been going through the residential neighborhood. That's something that we worked with, that we got involved immediately, and we were able to put some signage up and direct them out of the area. So I can tell you that we do that. That's just a normal part of our everyday doings that we're aware of, yes.
Okay.
I appreciate you bringing it forward, and if you want to give me more detailed information on that, I'll make sure that we look into it.
I want to go back to the American Bank Center. One of the things that I've been griping at the city about since I was elected was the poor maintenance. And 20 years, the city has not done a great job of maintaining. And the ABC Center complex is a perfect example of that. The roof needs to be replaced, the carpet needs to be replaced, the air conditioning system's on its last leg. And so the money that we're going to put aside, I think the majority of the council, I can speak for, we are very committed to having very specific language that you will vote on that will be the anchor for whatever time period we select to make sure that that work gets done. But the money for maintenance of those facilities is extremely important. Our art museum needs air conditioning replacement for that just a couple of months ago. They're still working on that. The Science Museum needs all kinds of maintenance, and I've talked to our museum director about that extensively. So those are the maintenance dollars that we're going to put aside in this 1/8 cent sales tax bank account, if you will, so that we can utilize it for maintenance over the course of the next 20, 25 years to keep these facilities up to date like you expect them to be. Yes, ma'am. The bayfront facilities, and that means the arena, the ABC. Pardon.
It's the different 1/8 cents. So there's two.
The seawall, 8 cents?
That's a different
or the
1/8.
other
The
one?
seawall's different. So there's two 1/8 cent sales tax. One's for the American Bank Center complex, and the other is for the seawall. So they're two different ones. And the seawall will be for the seawall. And the other 1/8 cent will be for the ABC. I call it the ABC Center complex. I think we need to find a name for that, but it's all of the facilities that the city owns that Heather showed on that one page, which includes the three museums, the Harbor Place, which I don't think has received any city money in 20 years that I know of, and it desperately needs work. So those are the facilities, and we just spent a whole bunch on the water garden back to life, and it needs to be maintained. You can't just build it and then walk off and leave it. And we've done.
Clarifying questions. So those are existing taxes, the 1/8, right, for the ABC Center and for the seawalls.
That is correct, yes.
Okay, so what happens if to those tax dollars?
So the taxes, so the tax dollars that have already been collected would continue to be used, and other entities that are eligible to receive sales tax could take it to election for a different purpose. So RTA could take it to election, the county could take it to election.
If we don't pass it, we essentially lose it.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Okay. Yes.
Or
And we lose the. Correct. Yeah, we definitely don't want to do that. So, 1/8, that is just for the arena. Current.
The ballot measure and through the measure, through the voter language was for the arena. So it can only be used, so if we have something that breaks in the convention center or Selena Auditorium, arena.
Okay, so we want, so the goal is to expand it, halls to the Selena Auditorium to.
Exactly, that whole, everything defined as
district.
basically the complex, along with the other city-owned facilities and the water gardens.
Great, okay, and then do we still have debt service on the arena complex?
So that will be paid off in September of '25, which triggers the expiration. Okay. Same thing with the seawall. That is the last debt payment.
Okay, great. That sounds like a fantastic plan. I appreciate you guys for bringing that. Now, on the other 1/8, the seawall, does that include North Beach?
No, it does. The seawall, the salt flat levies.
Okay, this may be a bond 2024 question,
Sure.
but is there any money allocated to at North Beach, or is that currently being?
I'm glad you brought that up. www.cctexas.com/bond 2024. You see a much more comprehensive presentation on the bond, and included in that bond, I just discussed it because it was correlated with the rest of the citywide projects. But we do have in the bond proposal streets, Surfside and Gulf Spray in North Beach. But the reason why we're asking for that $3 million is because approved a $14.05 million drainage project for North Beach. And I'd be wrong to call it a drainage. There's a linear canal, there's pumps, and other going to address the four different types of the four different causes to flooding on the North Beach Peninsula. So that's a $14 million project that's currently in design. We anticipate going into construction when right at the end of the year. And we're asking for just three more $1 million that's going to go towards the elevation of streets on the North Beach Peninsula. So we are addressing the historical flooding issues. Hence why Ron and those guys are here, because they're quite happy with us about that. And we're looking for just $3 million more to do street elevations as part of that project.
Thank you.
And then in addition, within the 1/8 cent sales tax for the seawall and the flood mitigation, there is phase 2 of that North Beach project. So this would be phase 1, which is the northern portion of North Beach. Then once the bridge goes down, then we would continue with a phase 2, which is included as one of the eligible projects, or proposed projects right now for the 1/8 cents that would be the seawall and flood mitigation.
I think there's some rationale behind getting actual numbers before voting on bonds, and this, and even, I mean, it's this little bit of a scare tactic to say, oh, the city county does it, or the hospital district, or anybody else. If they try to recoup that, we can still vote against that if we so choose. But it's kind of crazy. Raise those streets, right? But it took $9 million to repair the water garden.
It's two different projects.
No, it is two different projects, but that's why we would like to see definitive numbers are not adding up.
Conversation regarding the cost estimates has got a little convoluted. So let me invite Radna. This is Radna, the Assistant Director of Engineering, and she'll walk you all through how we arrive at our cost estimates, because it's not numbers that's projects, OPCs that's generated by our engineering consultants and things of that nature. So you want to...
Management and engineering services. I've been with City for 9.5 years and on engineering services for 4.5 years. So in my 4.5 years with engineering services, I've worked on several, looking at the estimates, design contracts, and all the bids. So these estimates, I've worked. We have Alameda Street on the bond project. So I go to the previous Alameda section. I see, okay, cost. So based on that, we develop these cost estimates. So there is a weight to it. It's not just a number that's thrown out of a box or something. So we look at those numbers, and then, because I'm a licensed professional, numbers to the public also. So it's not just we put those numbers. There is some...
Clear, as far as the engineering services department in the city, the engineering department, they're not new to construction, and with that much construction that takes place in the city, there's a wealth of our engineers to use to put together those cost estimates that is presented to the public. So it's not a... And again, we do have licensed professional engineers that work very numbers, spit those cost estimates out before they even make it to my and is put out there to the public. How many engineers are in the...
12 engineers, licensed professionals.
Okay.
It's taking that long to turn
All right.
around project?
Someone else had a question?
Going back and looking at these costs. Okay, how many, or how old are these? So you only use 24, calendar 24 cost? Well, let's say, we're going to do a project that was done 5 years ago, looking at those numbers.
No, we are not looking at the old numbers. We're looking at the brand new numbers, like in the
Well,
past.
back and look at the previous cost, do you, and it says, okay, we can't use anything past 1 year.
Yeah, we open bids like every Wednesday, we open several bids. So we look at the new bids numbers. So these numbers were just developed in, right, exactly. I'm talking about the bond projects estimate for the 175 million that we are putting together. And the type A is different. And you also need to understand those are long stretches of streams. They are not just a 1 mile or.
But you also had estimated costs.
And what you're referring to is stormwater projects. Those cost estimates are by engineer on my team and stormwater departments and public works. The stormwater and those cost estimates are based off of previous projects that were performed. So
How old are the previous projects? That's what
unrealistic because of escalating construction costs. They're fully aware of that. And so we're not gaining numbers older than a year or 2 years. If you right?
Well, yeah, I mean, because, I mean, I see a lot of times y'all come out with an estimated cost and then you come back 6 and 8 months later and go, well, hey, we're a little short. We need another $15–20 million.
And I'll tell you why. That's one more part of that process where I told you that we're doing it and they wouldn't get to the project for 7–8 years. So by then, of course, construction costs escalated and they had to come back to council, oh, we don't have enough money. Well, that's because you asked for the money 6 and 7 years. And we're doing design, and then we'll look for construction in the following bond program. That actually design the project. We get and we get cost estimates based off of the design, because when you do responsible for giving us an estimate of how much the project is going to cost, and then we take it to the subsequent bond program with updated cost estimates that are developed by construction engineers, and that's what is placed on the following program. So now you're not put in a position where we ask for all 2 years later, ask for the construction dollars, and the that's requested reflects real world current pricing.
Okay, you're also the design process. Okay, I think it's what, $2 million for 2 new design firehouses.
2.5. That's good.
Can't we reuse the same design for those?
No, when you do design, and I don't want to get. And if you want to talk about, she can go into great detail about the geotechnical studies and all the site specific. So with that being said, we coming to a close. Are there any additional questions?
That you have put under the seawall, all these. What happens when one of those, it was Turkey Creek and half a dozen, and something happens to the seawall? You say, oh, there's no money to do the seawall because Turkey Creek took it all.
Sure. So like I said in the slide, we've determined an amount that would be set aside. And then amounts in addition to that would be utilized for the other projects. So we would set aside a specific amount, determine what that amount is, and that would be set aside on an annual basis specifically for the seawall. And then amounts over and above that would then be applied to projects that are shown.
So when we're voting for the 8 cents, are we voting for those individual?
That's where we've got 2 different things, but it may be over. But no, you wouldn't be voting specifically for those projects. You'd be voting for allocation use on the seawall. And
they may not even be done, right?
So there is the possibility, so say we receive grant funding or things like that, we may have other funding sources where we may not need the sales tax for them.
Okay. We are voting just for the 1/8 cent to go to the seawall.
Yeah.
the ABC complex. Different animals.
Right, they're two different things.
They're completely two different things.
Two different things. I understand that. But the seawall, she just said, and I asked,
We are going
you
to
are
make that
diluting
language very
other projects under there that were listed on the wall.
Several months ago, we called it, Jim, maybe you remember, I want to say foundation, but that's not. And I think we put $8 or $9 million in it, and we said that will always.
$8 or $9 million won't do anything.
I'm sorry?
$8 or $9 million won't do anything on the seawall.
Is to guarantee that we're going to take care of the seawall fund. It will be the most important thing we do, but we're not going to do. We can't take care of the seawall and the flood mitigation that we're going to put in place to protect the businesses and people who live in downtown Corpus Christi.
Okay, but members said flood, use that money for flood in other parts for flood.
And I personally am not going to support that.
Okay.
I may be the only one, but we need to keep this. This is the reason why we got defeated last time, is because we made it too complex and very specifically so it's easy for voters to understand, because somebody here said it a while ago in November election. So we have to be very succinct about what we're going to put forward.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. Well, again, please, for the bond, check out cctexas.com/bond 2024. Questions after the town hall, and we appreciate everybody's time. Thank you all. Have a good night.